So welcome everybody. Hope everybody's having a great start to their Tuesday morning. This is the Data in the Details webinar. We are going to just hold off a little bit. We got some people still coming in. So if you're joining us here, just hold back for a second, grab yourself a cup of coffee real quick, and we'll get started. So just hold tight for just a little bit. We're going to make sure everybody piles in here. We'll just give a couple minutes for just people to get logged in. All right, so looks like we got some people finally coming in here. And for those of you joining us again, my name is Matt from Grit Technologies. We're just going to hold tight just for a couple, maybe 1 or 2 more minutes here, just to get everybody in the chat. This is going to be an interactive webinar. So if we want to answer you guys' questions, but we want to do it, we want you to be part of the conversation here. So if you guys are currently, well, I think everybody's working remotely these days, but if there's certain things as far as tracking productivity challenges you guys are having, with remote work, go ahead and even start submitting those questions right now or into the chat. We'd like to really make sure that as we're going through everything that we have prepared for you today, that we're going to be able to answer those questions for you. So we want this to be high value, and we are going to get started here in just a minute. Cool. All right. So I think what we'll do is we'll go ahead and get started. So we got some more people coming in here. So, all right. So thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Matt Moline. I am with Grit Technologies. We've also got Jake here as well from Sparks. Thank you so much for being here. And as the title says, the data is in the details. So this is all about today. What we're talking about is tracking productivity with your remote teams. And again, this is supposed to be an interactive webinar. So we got the chat open. We've got the Q&A available as well. So if there's things that I'm going over or Jake goes over today, I want you guys to just go ahead and comment in there. So actually, to start off first, why don't you guys just tell me where you guys are from? We got people all over from Michigan right now. Get in the chat. Just let me know what city you guys are from. And just make sure that all the chat and everything is working today. So a little bit about both our companies. Who are we? Who's Grit? Who's Spark? Well, if you Google us, we'll see that we're Michigan-based companies. Collectively, we've got 5 different offices across all of Michigan, and we serve hundreds of different clientele. Really quick, again, who I am. I'm the sales and marketing manager here at Grit Technologies, and I just oversee everything with our sales and marketing department. I also work directly with all of our clients, and I've got, gosh, I think it's been over 20 years of experience with working in technology and video and anything related to IT. So I'm excited to be here. And I want to, and just again about Grit real quick, we work with small to medium-sized businesses, and essentially we're outsourced IT. We become the IT department for small to medium-sized businesses in Michigan. And really our goal is to just make sure that clients really just have no problems. Their infrastructure is built the right way. And we want to make sure that their uptime is maximized and their downtime is minimized. So I'm going to hand this over to Jake. Jake, why don't you just go ahead and take a minute and just introduce, who you are and who's Spark.
Absolutely. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate that introduction. And yep, I'm Jake Lantz. I'm Vice President and Director of Client Experience over here at Spark Business Works. We are a custom software design services company that's based here in Michigan with 3 locations. And we build custom software that really goes and focuses on bringing your team together in ways that is bringing data together. So this is a really exciting topic today for us to talk about. How do we actually get data from those that are remote and bring it together so you can actually view it and understand what it's actually telling you as you're connecting out with your employees. So really excited to share on that. And I've been with Spark for 4 years and began as a product manager, and now am focused on the client experience front and sales front. So I've been dealing with clients from day one and helping ensure that they're proud of what we're building for them. And now getting the opportunity to go and help really look at the ideas and ways that productivity is important to organizations and how we can go and help them.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Jake. And again, welcome everybody to the Data's in the Details. So what are we really going to be talking about today? What's the goal is we're going to be looking at a couple questions that have come recently with everything with COVID and working remotely. People are coming to me. I know, Jake, people are coming to you and they're really asking, hey, how can we better track the productivity with our remote teams? I think all of us are struggling with this in some way or another. And really, how the data that we put in on a daily basis, how can we use it to track performance? I think with us having to work remote with all these mandates and even us looking to continue to work remote, a lot of the systems and processes that we used didn't really translate well. And there were some struggles there. There's a lot of manual processes. We might have developed some new processes, but it's still very, still very manual, still very hands-on. And the goal for this webinar today is to answer your guys' questions, to be interactive. This is not going to be a death by PowerPoint. This is not going to be, a bunch of slides and presentations, even though I am doing some slides and presentations, right now. But I want you guys, to really be a part of this conversation with us. And I think at the end of this, I think you guys are going to have a lot of good information and at least a plan or at least, a direction you guys can move your teams moving forward. So I've had a conversation like this with multiple times with multiple companies. We supply a lot of, detailed information for our clients about their users and it's great. And we always get asked the question, like, can you provide even more? Can you, kind of see who's working on what, whatever. And the problem is we just don't have the insight into their systems. And that's why I got Jake here today to kind of show us some ways to do that. But first off, let's start with a question for you guys. And I want you guys to go and put this in the chat, put this in the Q&A. What is one area of visibility you would like to improve with your remote teams? Go ahead and just put that in there. Take a second, get that into the chat, into the Q&A. But what's one area that you guys think you would like to improve? What would you like to see? I'd like to see what your guys' responses are to that. Because ultimately, I think what we would like to see is like this cool custom dashboard. It's got automation built into it. We've got, in our case, this is actually one of our dashboards that we use internally here at Grit, and it shows me, because we're in IT, we have all, tickets come in and we have anybody that has an issue or needs a support request, it goes into a ticketing system and we get this data printed out for us automatically. But I can see things like how many tickets I have open, how many tickets are closed, how many are open for the day, where we at as far as our average, response rate. It even goes down to the user level, which is again why we're here today, is to really look at going all the way down to the user level. I can see if somebody's overloaded. You see, I got like Andrew here on the display. He's above the threshold that way he can handle. So now we can move things around and get the appropriate people in to take some of that load off. We've got our leaderboards. You can see who's in first place, and in last place. And it's this live data and this live information that's really, really cool. Example of a project board that we use here as well. I can see things like my open hours, how many open hour project hours I have available, how many projects I have open right now. What's my project backlog? How many weeks can I quote somebody out? I have another dashboard here too that shows me how many tickets I have available with no available budget right now, how many projects have no available budget. So I think the goal is that we all would like to get something like this to where we can get that level of visibility and we know how each individual employee is doing. But how do you even start to do that? And where we're going to start is really at the foundation here. And then we're going to get really into the cool stuff. And Jake's got a lot of cool stuff to show us today. So I really want to briefly, really quick, and I'll make this really quick and wrap this up, is we got to start with what's called KPIs. And you guys have probably heard this term before, and it stands for key performance indicator. Some of you might have that. You might have a few of these, in place. You might be tracking some of this stuff. You might not be, but the point of the KPI are really meant to be a key driver or indicator of performance, and it's per role, it's per person in your company. Now, we find that there are two main issues that companies make with KPIs, and one is that they just don't have them. They might have the goal of, I just want to make more money than what I did last year. Okay, well, that's great, but how do you get there? Or two, they focus on the results and not the leading indicators versus the lagging indicators. So let's use an example of sales. A lagging indicator would be like revenue. Okay, like what's your target revenue? Most sales teams will focus more on the lagging indicator, which would be just that revenue indicator, and not the micro things you can do that lead up into that lagging indicator. But let's look at some examples of KPIs to get your brains going. If you guys got some KPIs that you guys are currently tracking right now too, put that in the chat, put that into the Q&A. I want to know what you guys are currently tracking. But here's just some examples. Again, this might not be for you specifically in your company. We've got a lot of different industries that are here today, but let's just take a look at some examples. So here's some examples of a sales KPI. Number of new contracts signed, what's the net sales, average time for conversion. Those are some examples that will lead up. Those are those micro indicators to lead up. So examples of financial KPIs, growth in revenue, net profit, gross profit margin, your EBITDA, those are all good examples of operational KPIs. Financial KPIs. This is operational KPIs, order fulfillment, time to market, your employee satisfaction rating, employee churn rate, important things to know. Some examples of your for your marketing team. This is kind of some hard ones sometimes, but monthly website traffic, number of qualified leads, ebooks published if you guys are doing ebooks, blog articles, so forth and so forth. So again, what are some of your KPIs? I want you guys to put that in the chat, put that into the Q&A. What are some things you guys are tracking right now? So what ultimately happens is that people will start tracking, they'll start getting this information, they'll start getting these details, and they'll start really doing a good job of getting this stuff out there. And you might be using things like a whiteboard. You might be using things like Post-it notes on a board, to track this information on a yearly and quarterly or monthly progress. But ultimately what happens, or actually you might even be using like an Excel document, and tracking all this information in which is all good things. But what ultimately happens is that these processes are going to break, especially when it comes to your remote teams. There's no way to really see what they're doing, is if they're more permanent remote or semi-remote. They have to come back in and get that information. You got to set up sales calls. You got to set up meetings for all of this stuff. But ultimately that equates to downtime and loss of time. And what we want to do is we want to try to automate those processes and automate this information and get this information in real time. But the question is where do you even start? So enough of that. Jake, I'm going to get you into the conversation now. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's kind of where we do a great job of getting people set up with, their computer hardware and everything like that. We get, we help with some of their processes and things. But ultimately, I see this a lot where you got like one person, they're responsible for updating the whiteboard, or they're the sole, bearer of the information when it comes to, having stuff like an Excel program, and they're sharing all this data, and they're doing a good job. They're doing a great job actually of keeping all this stuff, but ultimately this person gets overloaded. They take vacation, or there's a team and things break, and I've even seen it on the IT side where they're using applications. Like a good example is sharing like an Excel file, like in Microsoft, Teams or SharePoint or something like that. And they're missing information, or somebody forgot to input in first, and it just starts breaking because it was never designed that way. So talking about the foundation of KPIs and, getting this data over and incorporate information, where would you even start? Like where would you go? Like what would you do in this situation? How do you lead people in that direction?
Yeah. So from the KPI standpoint, that's the end result, right? Is being able to view the data and get the insights that you need out of the data that you have. And when we look at that, the starting point is really understanding where is your data coming from?
Right.
How are you actually going to get that data in a common location in a way that it can be reported back where it's actually an insight? I was reading, that was the quote I saw, that I was going through some quotes and different things this morning. And that was the piece I saw was the goal is to turn data into information and that information into insights. So the KPI is the insight, but understanding where that data is actually coming from is that key starting point. Now,
Okay.
you mentioned a few of them. You mentioned spreadsheets. You mentioned some of the manual processes and the way that data is getting into, whether it's a system or into somebody's head. That's where we're seeing that with a lot of companies. It starts in the head of an individual because they're that key individual for the team to be able to go get the information into their accounting system, into their ERP system. And what's happening there is you have this, I mean, there's the hit by the bus factor that comes in with one individual having all the information, but there's also then the factor of, well, let's get it into a spreadsheet. And that's a great starting point. Let's get it into a Excel spreadsheet. But to get to those indicators that are being updated more in real time, we've got to get it into an actual method to be able to visualize that data, bring it back in a way that it's actually can be consumed beyond just this manual entry. So I'll end up showing some examples of how that can happen. And really look at ways to bring data from being in the head or being on a spreadsheet into a more consumable real time.
Absolutely. No, that's good. I want to call out a couple people here too in the chat here, Jake. So looks like there was Paul on here. He said, one of the things he would like to see, and maybe as we're going through your examples here, it might be cool to maybe we could incorporate some of the stuff for Paul here. Sure. He was saying one of the things he'd like to see probably look like at monitoring and tracking sales and service productivity and goals. So that's a good one. Thank you, Paul, for entering that in there. Looks like there's another Paul. He would like to, it might be the same Paul. He said the deal progress, open to close, number of deals closed. So that's something that can definitely be done. I know that's something we do internally as well. And Julian says, absolutely, KPIs and tracking depends on the access and quality of your data. Thank you so much. So if you guys got questions and comments, definitely incorporate that. But Jake, not to take away from what you're saying, once you continue, show us what you got.
Yeah, you got it. I saw Paul's note down there. I didn't have this screen ready, but I pulled it on up here. Was just exactly that. Is on the KPI side is understanding kind of that capture ratio of what's the open, what's the closed, what are we looking at, and then those leading indicators that I saw mentioned as well too is this registered opportunity. So in this case, on this dashboard that was put together was really looking at, okay, yes, we want to understand the capture ratio that has happened in the past, but the registered opportunities is a leading indicator as well too with regards to what are we going to look at in the future. And seeing an insight like this is seeing it's down 3 from a previous month may give an insight on over now to the leadership team or the sales team to understand what actions they need to be taking to ensure that they're going to go and hit their sales goals in future months. So this is just an example, kind of the end result, but going back to the data, I'll go ahead and pull this piece up. It really comes down to, again, understanding where that data is at. In this example that I have right here, you'll see there's 4 different data points. Asana for project management, Harvest was their time entry, QuickBooks was their accounting, and Zendesk was for their service desk system. And as we looked at this, this is a great method to start with as well, is understand the data points, write it down, make sure you can get it documented down. And then what we put together with folks is really a plan on how we're going to get to the point of actually reporting information back from common data points, right? Because in Asana, they have projects, and they have jobs and they have ways of tracking that. In Zendesk, they have ways of tracking work orders or service orders. Well, those can get attached to jobs and tied to an employee that then lets you know the cost of doing that job. So this is a great example right here to understand how data can be put together and tied together and then brought into one common location.
Very cool. Very cool. So really you can take multiple data sets essentially with what you guys do, and you can incorporate it into essentially one program, and you guys can display it, in real time. And this is a good way. It doesn't matter where that employee is, right? It takes it going back to why we're here today. We're talking about how to track and protect productivity of those remote employees. It doesn't matter where they're at. They can be halfway across the world, as long as they're inputting data into their systems. You guys, whether it's through either one of these, it's going to be able to be automatically updated without having to necessarily get on a call, update a spreadsheet, do all of that. Right. That's pretty cool.
You got it. So it comes down to just knowing where your data is at. And a lot of the times the homework that we'll give during a first meeting with somebody we're sitting down with a company is saying, hey, go back, write down your processes, write down your data points. Let's understand that, but also write down those KPIs you're looking to get out of that system or get out of those systems. If you knew that things could be tied together, what could be next? And that's a fun exercise to go through. I'm going to zoom through some examples, Matt. Is that okay?
Yeah, let's see some examples. Yep.
All right. So this example dashboard, you're seeing the end result again of KPIs that they wanted to tackle. This was endodontics company that had multiple practices across the country, and what we helped them create was automating data from back-end systems in multiple locations. And bringing that data into one location now is giving the insights to their leadership team on what decisions need to be made around collections. How are they collecting data at this location versus this other location? And it can help also understand from a productivity side, really, okay, well, what's the results that we're seeing at each of these locations? And they can see it on a location by location basis, or they can see that as more of a combined basis. And I wrote this down earlier because I looked up productivity. And this is where I always start, is like, let's go to the root of all of this. And it's the effectiveness of productive effort, especially in industry, as measured in terms of output per unit. So if we can get down to, from a productivity side, understanding what's the output per unit,
right,
then you're going to be able to see the information that you need.
That's
from a lot of the times I had mentioned kind of in the head is where some of the data starts. Also, a lot of processes begin in spreadsheets and whiteboards. And in this case, this client was looking at ways that they could do their scheduling for their jobs. And one of the key ingredients, and we talk about the data being in the details, is for this was that they needed ways to understand what types of certifications their employees had, what types of roles do these employees fit, right? When you have hundreds of employees, it's either in one person's head where they understand that John has this certification or not. Well, certain jobs in this company's business required specific certifications or they would get fined. So making sure that there were exceptions when you would try to drag a individual into a specific job. And that's what happens on this right side now, is they can drag somebody from one job to another. It will actually notify them of that exception saying, this specific OSHA certification is needed. Are you sure you want to assign John to this job? And that's where you can get down to details of not only productivity, but now actually leading decisions and helping you make smart decisions for your business. Right. So then those individuals can be most productive in their job as well.
Yeah, I really love that, because there's so many times like we know internally, like I'm thinking of like a managerial position, right? We know internally what our team's capable of, what types of projects and stuff they can do, or what skill sets are available. But if that person goes away, the knowledge base goes away with it, right? And this is a good way to say, or if you're really, really busy and you're like, okay, I need people, I need to get this project done or get people assigned, you might make a mistake and put the wrong person in the wrong role. And that could cause a lot of downtime and issues as well. I could see that, being there. So having something like this I love that. That's just a great example. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know I'm kind of going through some slides here. The focus is so I can give some examples, right? To understand what's out there. Because this is what you're seeing a lot now is work orders, these, technicians or somebody's coming on site to fill out some papers. Those papers get left. information goes back to the back office, and that's great for grabbing information, but there's double entry. There's ways now that that data can't be really accumulated until somebody at the back office now enters it into another system. And we have an example from this company that they were dispatching about 1,500 orders a month. And where they then looked at, look, we have to scale where we have one location, but we have now 7 locations we need to scale to. So we can't do this paperwork in the same way where somebody's in the back office entering this in. We need data in more real time. And what that led to was them building out really a dispatch system, and one that they could get to their drivers. So this is a pet cremation company. They needed a way to track from veterinarians, getting information over to them to go and cremate the pets appropriately and in the right way for those families. So they built out a board that they can actually notify of where certain pets were needing to be picked up from specific drivers. But it really came down to this, was an app. They had something in their fingertips of their drivers to be able to actually report back information in real time, notes, if a pet was picked up, if there was specific information they had to detail out, if they needed a signature from that veterinarian. They're not now storing, I think it was like 100,000 sheets of paper they had up in a room, where they're not storing that anymore. It's all digital now. And they have that where they can get that information when they need it. And ultimately it leads back to being able to report back the data that they need.
Wow, that's I mean, that's pretty amazing. And I think a lot of this was done. I'm familiar with those guys too. I think a lot of their stuff was they would have to have like routine meetings. They would have to have people come on site to like get like their orders out and stuff like that too, right? And
oh yeah,
it was like, how much time are you wasting to have people to come to this location to, to just get assignments, right? And to make sure things are picked up, and to verify that. I mean, I think if we sit back and think for a second of the different processes and, the different ways how we get our information or input our data, I'm sure there's ways what you're showing, we can relate to those examples of, it could be, we possibly could cut out some meetings or even a gathering or something like that and keep people moving and not having to check out, because ultimately it's good to have those meetings and things. Like, you need that camaraderie as a team, like that's obviously very important. That's not what I'm saying. It's just, it can be too much. And essentially it's not really scalable, because as you grow as a company, there's a bottleneck issue at that point too.
Yeah. So, there's an asphalt company I was talking to, it was probably about a month or two ago, and they were having to have individuals drive 30 minutes to an on-site location where they got their job assignments, and having to have them go out on site and then come back at the end of the day. This is pretty typical. We hear these types of stories all the time, but it comes down to is we have so much technology out there that can be leveraged. It just comes to thinking outside the box in terms of your organization and how you can go tackle that information and make sure that it's then getting back in a way that, hey, if it's real time, awesome. Right. But that can lead to the insights you need to be able to make strong decisions.
No, that's great. And it ultimately comes down to, now you have automation built into where you can keep track of everybody, right? They have goals set in place. We going back to the foundation of getting those KPIs, setting up those KPIs, having those conversations with your team of what's acceptable, what your thresholds are and all of that. And then incorporating some of this automation, working with a partner like you guys to make those systems talk to each other, come out in a way that's visually appealing, it's understanding, it could be accessed anywhere. And then you're off to the races at that point. And you're not, there's a lot of benefits to remote work. We're not going to get into any of that today, but it just goes in, having something like this is just going to help improve, I think, a lot of businesses, which is great. And it takes away a lot of this manual stuff that we're still trying to navigate and work through. I'd like to take a second too, and just talk about how to keep people just continually productive. In just like you said, we got the technology. There's so much that we have available today. And just a word too, just on, keeping people productive too. It's important to understand the technology that they all have, making sure that it's cataloged. You have that information, understand like with their workstations and their computers that they have. One of the things that we're really proud of here at Grit is, having things like asset management, where at any one point in time, we can see, who has what computer, is it getting old? One of the biggest, things about working remote is not always knowing who has what. And we usually could see in an office space, who had what machines and everything. But now we know just by the tool sets that we have in place, who has what the warranty is it something that's in the end of its life cycle? Are they having any problems? Because of, some old hardware that's out there. That's an important piece. And that's one area that we really excel at, and it's great because people just know, it doesn't matter. You can hire 5 new remote employees, today, and you'll know everything you need to know about them and where their current hardware is and where they stand. So we want to open this up to a Q&A. Jake, thank you so much for showing those examples. And we want to respect everybody's time because we kind of designated a half hour. We're going a little bit over, but I wanted to kind of open this up for some Q&A in the comments or in the Q&A section. If you've got any questions, or if you would like us to speak specifically to a certain point, or, if Jake showed an example you want a little more information on, we'd be happy to look into that right now. So we'll take just a minute, and if you've got a question, go ahead and put it in. All right. I'll give you guys just one more minute here. All right. I think we're good for today. So Jake, thank you so much for being here and showing those examples. If anybody wants to reach out to Spark, if you guys are looking to automate some of your processes and get your remote teams working a little more better out there, and maybe you guys can potentially help them out. So one of the things I just want to say is just again, thank you so much for being a part of this and the whole Spark team. You guys have been great partners. You guys, we've come to a point where I always incorporate you guys into some way or another, just because you guys are really the process experts. Like, you guys design software and you guys make a lot of cool things happen for people. But we do great on the IT side. We make computers and systems talk with each other, which is great. But ultimately, there's a process issue with a lot of businesses. They're trying to figure that out, and it's just great to be able to have you guys as a partner to get people to excel in their business and what they're doing. So thank you for being here.
Absolutely. And I'd say the same on our end as well, too. I mean, anytime we're talking about different data and systems and that side of things, one of the things that always comes up is, what about securing that data and making sure that it's in the right way? So I know that's something you all take care of for your clients, and we appreciate it. And this is why we're often talking about what you all are doing. Right. Those that we connect with. So I appreciate the time today.
Cool. Well, if anybody has any questions after the fact, all of our information will be available. We will send out an email. This is also being recorded, so you guys can refer back to this at any time. Thank you so much for everybody for showing up and being a part of this. And we will see you guys next time. Thank you.